You've heard the word fentanyl. It feels like it's everywhere in the news, tied to a crisis that's just devastating communities. But what is it really? Where is it all coming from? And what makes it so unbelievably deadly? Today, we're going to break down the fentanyl crisis. Okay, take a look at this number on your street, 18 to 45. This isn't just a statistic. This represents a really tragic, unbelievable reality. Fentanyl poisoning is now the #1 cause of death for Americans in this age group. Think about that. It's killing more people than car accidents, more than suicide, more than gun violence. It is a silent epidemic, and it's hitting the country right in its prime. So to really get our heads around the seriousness of this, we've got to look at the numbers. And believe me, the statistics behind this crisis are, well, they're staggering. They paint a picture that's almost hard to comprehend. So what exactly is this stuff? Right, well, fentanyl isn't like heroin, which comes from a plant. This is a synthetic opioid, meaning it was created entirely in a lab. And it was actually designed for a good reason, for legitimate medical use, like managing the absolute worst pain for cancer patients or after a major surgery. Its incredible power is what made it so effective, and it's that very same power that makes it so unbelievably dangerous out on the street. This right here, this puts its potency into terrifying perspective. 2 milligrams, that's it. An amount so tiny it's almost invisible to the naked eye, literally. Like a few grains of table salt can be enough to make a person stop breathing. It's this microscopic razor's bin margin for error that explains why overdoses are so frequent and so tragically hard to prevent. Now, while the US is really the epicenter of this crisis, make no mistake, this is a global issue. In the United States, fentanyl is involved in the huge majority of the more than 100,000 opioid deaths we see every year. Our neighbors to the north in Canada, they're facing a very similar catastrophe, with fentanyl driving about 3/4 of their opioid deaths. And if you zoom out globally, the numbers are just as grim. Synthetic opioids like fentanyl are behind hundreds of overdose deaths every single day all around the world. Okay, so how does a chemical cooked up in a lab turn into a street-level killer on such a mind-boggling scale? Well, the answer is a very sophisticated and very, very profitable international supply chain. It's pretty much a 4-step process. It all starts in China, which is the main source for the wrong ingredients, the precursor chemicals you need to make fentanyl. From there, those chemicals get shipped over to Mexico. That's where powerful cartels run secret labs to cook them into the final product. And from there, the finished fentanyl gets smuggled across the border. And get this, it's often hidden in cars and trucks passing through legal checkpoints. And then it spreads like a virus across the entire country. So you have to ask, why fentanyl? Why the big switch? Well, it really just comes down to pure economics. Follow the money. As you can see here, a kilogram of heroin might cost a drug trafficking organization, say, $60,000. A kilogram of fentanyl, tiny fraction of that cost. And because it is so incredibly potent, that one cheap kilo can be stretched and cut to make a massive number of doses, which means enormous profits. It's just cheaper to make, it's easier to smuggle, and it's way, way more profitable. And that profit motive leads us directly to what is probably the single greatest danger of this modern crisis. Its deceptive nature. People are dying because they literally have no idea what they're taking. You see, on the street, fentanyl is a master of disguise. Traffickers use pill presses to create counterfeit pills that look identical to real prescription drugs like OxyContin, Xanax, or even Adderall. They also mix it into powders like cocaine or heroin to make their supply go further. So a user might think they're buying something they know, something they trust, but what they're actually getting could be a fatal dose of a drug that's 100 times stronger. And this is the absolutely heartbreaking reality of it all. We're not just talking about longtime drug addicts here. So many of the victims are casual users or even first-time users. It could be a teenager who takes what they think is an Adderall to help them study for a test, or someone at a party who tries what they believe is a simple painkiller. For them, one pill can be the first and the very last they ever take. The fallout from this crisis, it goes way beyond the individual user. It's a story of shattered families for sure, but it's also become a major flashpoint in international politics, one that echoes a really dark chapter in world history. Behind every single statistic is a story of just profound loss. A mother recalls the exact moment she found out her daughter, Nicolette, was gone. It just captures an unimaginable pain.
It's a primal grief that's being repeated in homes across the country, a sound that really echoes the true human cost of this epidemic. The crisis has also ignited these massive geopolitical tensions, and it's drawing some really interesting parallels to the opium wars back in the 19th century. So back then, Britain was flooding China with opium to fix a trade imbalance, and it led to widespread addiction. When China tried to stop it, Britain declared war. They won, and they forced China into these awful, unequal treaties. This whole period is what China still calls its century of humiliation. So, fast forward to today, some in the US are accusing China of engaging in a modern form of what's called asymmetrical warfare. The idea here is that by letting fentanyl precursors flow out of their country, China's deliberately exploiting America's big public health vulnerability, its demand for drugs, as a way to weaken a geopolitical rival without ever firing a shot. Of course, from China's perspective, this is an American problem. As their former ambassador pointed out, they see the crisis as being rooted in America's demand and our own history of overprescribing pills.
They call the payback theory a fantasy, and they point to their own painful history with opium as proof that they would never weaponize drugs. And this fundamental disagreement is a huge roadblock to getting real international cooperation. So when you're faced with a crisis this complex, one that touches everything from public health and criminal justice to international diplomacy, what in the world is being done to fight back? Well, the response has to be just as multifaceted as the problem itself. Yet there is no single solution here, no silver bullet. The fight is happening on a whole bunch of fronts at the same time. You've got law enforcement trying to stop the drugs at the border. You've got diplomats pressuring China and Mexico. You've got public health officials trying to expand treatment. You have harm reduction advocates handing out life-saving drugs like Narcan. And you have communities working on the ground to educate families and prevent drug use from ever starting. And those law enforcement efforts, they are getting some results. In just fiscal year 2024 alone, U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized over 19,600 pounds of fentanyl. That is a staggering amount, and it shows you both the scale of the trafficking problem and the intensity of the effort to stop it. But on the harm reduction side of things, there is a powerful tool that is literally saving lives every single day. It's called naloxone, but you probably know it by the brand name Narcan. It can actually reverse an opioid overdose in just a few minutes. And the fact that it's now available over the counter is a total game changer. It puts the power to save a life directly into the hands of friends, family, and first responders. It's a real sign of hope in a fight where every single second counts. Which kind of brings us back to the ultimate question, right? In a crisis that involves cartels, geopolitics, addiction, and deception, where do you even start? Where do you focus your energy? Do you put it all on stopping the supply chain, on treating addiction at home, or on educating young people before they ever even think about touching a pill? With a crisis this complex, the most important work, it has to begin somewhere. The real question is, where?